Because we think love is what we define love as in the dictionary or in the Bible or what we're taught by our parents, which has absolutely nothing to do with that. It's the embrace of everything. It's being able to be in shame and still be in love. It's being able to be enlightened and be in love. It's being able to pull that into balance, and through that balance, you stand in that truth all the time. And that's love. It's the emanation of yourself. And then at which point the world outside of you starts to adjust itself.
All right, guys. Sean Clayton is back on and got some interesting feedback on the first one, so I invited him back.
Dude, love it, man. Thanks for inviting me back.
No, I appreciate you actually responding to the comments, because some people would just ignore the hate, but you were willing to have some discussions with people.
That's so much. That's like the funnest part to me.
Right.
Like actually getting into it and standing in your truth and then being able to turn people. And not in a manipulative way. It's just when you stand in truth and then somebody's saying something and you know your position,
right,
they start to adjust themselves. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so you weren't affected at all by the negative feedback?
No, I actually love it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Some people really let that affect them, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Every time something we perceive as negative happens, it's not negative. It's just a perspective of negative based on how we feel about it. Right?
Wow. So it's your reaction.
It's my reaction. It's not them. They can say anything in the world. It's me and how I react to it. So then what my responsibility to do is actually love that, start to change the vibration of it. And what every time happens is they change.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all a magnification of what's inside of us, right?
Interesting.
So once you know what's inside of you and you stand in that truth, when we get thrown off, it's like, oh, the outside illusion, this table, you, everything else is more real than what's inside of me. So once I know that and I start to adjust everything outside of me based on the truth within, then I'm in my truth.
Right.
And there is no good or bad. There is no happy or sad. There is none of that. It's just balance. And then me staying in that allows me to then take anything. And that's what becoming the alchemist is.
Yeah, you actually persuaded me to no longer believe in good and bad.
Yeah.
Like, because growing up, you're taught that in every movie and everything you learn about wars, like good and bad.
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Because if there's good of one thing, there's worse of another, right? And you can kind of go one way or the other. It's like, oh, well, this is really good. Well, then there's also something better than that in somebody's opinion.
Right.
And just an opinion. And that means that thing that was good to you is worse to that. And so it's all this thing of relativity. You know, Einstein talks about this, where it's a moving target. So when we know the truth, then you eliminate the good and bad, and you just stand in what that is. And it's just love. Love is everything. That's to me the most important lesson that I've taught myself through this journey that I've been through, which is
love.
Love, just
Interesting.
love. Because we think love is what we define love as in the dictionary or in the Bible or what we're taught by our parents, which has absolutely nothing to do with that. It's the embrace of everything. It's being able to be in shame and still be in love. It's being able to be enlightened and be in love. It's being able to pull that into balance, and through that balance, you stand in that truth all the time. And that's love. It's the emanation of yourself. And then at which point the world outside of you starts to adjust itself. So
there's people that don't believe in love.
I know. And even in the not believing in love, they find it. Because here's the thing, everybody on their deathbed will find it.
You think so?
Everybody, yeah. Everybody, there's that moment in time where right before you die, like they call it, people have the, their
life flashes.
Before their eyes. That's love. And whether you think that love doesn't exist or it does, there's moments of bliss or happiness or whatever it is that you think that is out there. That's just love, right? But also the sadness that you go through is love. Because if there is this divine thing, we can call it God, we can call it Elohim, we can call it Yahweh, we can call it whatever you want to call it. There's a larger source out there that is emanating energy on everything that's around us. Like, what do you think powers you all the time? It's your soul. We think it's when I eat and I do all these other things, but there are people that don't eat for a while that are literally in comatose that are still alive. Like there's an energetic force that we call love that is in everything.
Wow.
It's in the trees, because the trees don't have, we can science it out all day long, but there's another energy that's inside of that keeps things going.
Really? Inside a tree?
Inside of everything. There's energy in everything.
Wow.
Everything is energy. Everything's vibration. You know about the Hermetic principles? We talked about this a little bit.
I think you touched on it last time, yeah.
All right, so there's a thing called the Hermetics, right? And they Billy Carson talks about Thoth. You've heard about this before, okay? Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus, like basically broke down these things called the Hermetic principles, or these 7 laws of the universe. All right, those 7 laws are the keys to pretty much everything. So there's the triangle, and actually this tattoo right here.
Oh, I've seen that.
Okay, yeah, which is called the Philosopher's Stone. The triangle that sits over this is basically what we call the isness of the universe. You have everything is mental, or the universe is mental in the mind of the all. Okay, so thoughts become things. When you think something, it starts to happen. Whether it happens now or later, it's not up to you as far as the timeline is concerned. That's based on your rhythm, but that's a whole other thing. Then you have over here, on the other side, you have literally everything is correspondence. So as above, so below, as within, so without, right? everything is interconnected. Like you look at the very, very small or like Planck scale of fermions and bosons and all these other things, they're the same thing as the universe. If you looked at that and you looked at the universe, it's almost an exact replication of each other.
Wow.
Right? So it's like everything's interconnected. So the energy inside of me is the same energy in a tree. And that's the third pillar over here. Everything is vibration, everything is energy. Right? So when you understand the isness of the universe, which is these first three pillars, then at which point you say, okay, well, then there's a square that sits inside of it. What the heck is that? This is just universal. This is everything is like what I call just it being. Then you have this square that sits inside of it. And that square is the balance of everything. All right? So the balance of it is the fact that, okay, well, there's a rhythm in life. You know, the pendulum swings to the left, the pendulum swings to the right. Everything kind of goes back and forth. Have you ever had a really good day, then you have a bad day the next one? Right? And it always happens that way.
Always.
Right? You're like, it's just kicking ass and it goes the other way. And the more that you get tapped into your spirituality or more the divine within you, the more you'll start to notice that. But the key is to get in balance and rise above it. So it's almost like a jump rope. When we were kids, like, it was a fun game that we played because the rope would come around, you just jump over it. The rhythm comes around, it could trip you or you just jump over it. And so when we're aware of the rhythm in our life, then we can just jump over it. That was like the comments. You just jump over it, look at it, love it, keep it moving. You jump over it again. It becomes a game to play instead of getting tripped up every time the rhythm hits you, right? Everything has polarity. There's good and bad of everything. That's also an opinion. Then you bring it together in balance, then you find truth. This is why we have prayer hands in church. Right. And then on top of that, everything is karma. Everything has cause and effect to it. So there's a cause to everything, but you have to understand what the cause is in order to find the balance to then turn back around and create the effect. You're the creator of your life. And the last thing is everything has gender, masculine and feminine. So these are those different aspects of the Hermetics. And the reality of it is once you understand the linearity of it, then you find the circle, which is the God within you that emanates the circle, the God outside of you.
Right.
And you can connect with those things by following these actual systematic steps. But that's like a framework that people can go by that works really well for me.
Wow. So there's a lot there. Yeah, that was crazy. I want to start with karma. So
nerd it out there for a second.
Yeah. How far back does that go? Because I met some really nice people. Yeah. But they seem to be affected karmically. Do you think it could be from past lives?
I don't. Yes, and I don't believe I know there's not time. So that there's no such thing as a past life.
Okay. So what would those be then?
That would be an energetic connection with another coordinate in space-time. So if we were to consider there to be a thing called space-time, there are coordinates of here's the space, here's the time that it is, and if I look at it, that's just a plot on the map. And there's this big map of creation that's out there. And there's, let's say, for instance, when I was going through my spiritual kind of awakening, I went to this past life regression person, and I had this thing where it was like, oh, I saw myself as like the Buddha, and I was in India, like this whole thing in Tibet or something, and I was walking a cow, and I'm like, of course I read the stories, of course I can map myself to it, but there was this thing that I was supposed to snap into. Do I believe that I am Buddha? Not at all. But it was a recognition of a space-time coordinate based on a story that I got that I was able to snap myself into and say, oh, okay, there's a lesson here for me. So there's a study in 1997 that came out by Gisson. I think Robert Gisson is his name, if I'm not mistaken. But Gisson came out with this study where he proved that you can go faster than the speed of light. So we talk about the sun, it takes this long for the light to get to us because of the speed of light is 186,000 whatever miles an hour, whatever the number is. I'm not good with the number thing. But it takes that long to get here. Not true. They actually proved that light moves significantly faster, that things happen faster than this. So if that's the case, that means that there is no time because everything happens instantaneously. That means that every star we see in the galaxy is hitting us now.
Really? Because they teach us that they're hundreds of thousands of years old.
They teach us that everything outside of us is an effect. They don't teach us that everything inside of us creates the superposition, basically collapses the wave function of the superpositions of the quantum that's outside of us. I can break that down a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the quantum that lives outside of us, and if you go and study, fermions, bosons, or you study electrons, or just photons, whatever it might be, everything lives in positive or negative state at any given time until you observe it. There was a double slit experiment that they did back 50, 60 years ago. In the double slit experiment, they basically shot photons. Have you heard of this one?
No.
Okay. They shot photons through two slits. And when they didn't observe it, the photons hit the back wall and they scatter all over the place. Then when they put a camera on it or watched it themselves, the photons hit exactly where we expected them to hit.
Wow.
Right? They've proven this out over and over and over and over again. And then what they did with in that study is they did a similar thing to see how fast things are actually happening. Well, then they realized they happen in an instant. They happen 20 times faster than the speed of light.
Damn.
So then at which point you take E equals MC squared, which is the calculation of, the whole, how energy is created and the whole whatnot. That means that the speed of light, you're blowing these numbers out of the water and things literally happen like this. So if that's the case, there is no time. So then you're snapping everything into reality based on the quantum possibilities that exist, because everything either lives in positive or negative. And there's this Schrodinger's cat experiment where they did a similar thing with a radioactive isotope. Put it in there, the cat's either alive or dead in the box.
Right.
My parents right now are either alive or dead until I call them, right? With everything behind me I can't see or sense. The world outside of me could be going absolutely bat crazy. And until I go observe it is when it becomes a reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's up to us and how we observe the reality to then snap things in to the matter that we see.
Wow.
Right? You, for instance, said, I want the studio to look this way.
Right.
I want these microphones to look this way. You observe those into reality. Now, there was some money that came behind that, and there was some, stuff that had to go behind that. But the thought that you had of making it look this way was your reality. And you could have done this by yourself, or you could have gotten other people that work with you to go and snap that into the reality based on the consensus that you have. The world works the exact same way. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is deep. So if time doesn't exist, though, then why do we age and die?
Because we've convinced ourselves that that's the case.
So you can avoid death, you're saying?
I know you're going to put this one up. Can you avoid death? You can avoid death if we all agree that that's a possibility. If we all agree, so if we are made in the reproduction in the image of God, and in that space, we then convince ourselves, okay, that we all can live much longer. What will happen? We'll all live much longer. Okay. What ends up happening is, let's say, for instance, you're like, I can live forever. Everybody around you says you can't. Right. So now they're observing you because you're energy. And what they're observing of you is how they're collapsing the potential and wave function of Sean into life. Okay? So if they say, well, no, you're going to die at 70, 80, 90, somewhere in that range, that's what's going to happen. No matter how no matter how hard you push against that.
So they have that much influence to affect someone else's lifespan.
That's why it's important what you have in your life energetically.
Wow.
Right? So then the thing is that, well, now society tells us that's the case, and we've convinced ourselves of that. So over time, everything that we've ever done is we've told ourselves a story and a narrative that we're supposed to age like this. Like, as a black man, I'm supposed to die at 72, 75 years old. That's like my vibe. I'm supposed to go. So now if I believe that that's the case and I'm genetically predisposed to all the stories that I'm telling myself from
the
my
health
past
conditions.
life, well, now I'm going to carry that with me. Right? So I'll give you an example. My mother had thyroid issue. She had Graves' disease. I didn't have any thyroid conditions or anything like that growing up. I get out of prison. We talked about this on the last show. I get out of prison, and all of a sudden, I have this thyroid condition. Well, where did the thyroid condition come from? Was it passed from my mother? Or was it the fact that because I was sexually abused when I was 9 to 14 years old and I didn't speak on it, that I actually carried it in my throat? And that I held that in a very specific energetic state where it ended up creating a sickness that once I started to express it, it went away. Now, what's cool about it is after the thyroid was radiated on me and I went through this whole exercise and I went from 160 pounds to 260 pounds back to 200 pounds, where I'm at now, I had to get on this medicine. So I got on this medication, this levothyroxine, stuff, and I was taking it. And in COVID, I couldn't find it anymore. And so I stopped taking it. Yeah. But then I was doing a lot of the Dr. Joe work and a lot of the meditation work that I was doing, and I was fine. And then a couple of years later, I go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, you're actually producing the right amount of T3 in your body, and you shouldn't be doing that. This is actually a miracle. Wow. So what is it? Like, what was that inside of me? What does that sickness really mean? And is it not possible for me within myself to see what's inside of me as always full, always holy, right? And then if that's the case, and then we can all convince each other of that, or all believe or know that that's the case, then now how are we observing each other into life? This is like we're at this really critical moment in life right now, to where either we're going to like blow up humanity, or we're all going to like snap into some really beautiful ascension.
Wow. What do you think is the catalyst for going down either route, I guess?
I mean, there's going to be, well, one is there's like the World War III kind of craziness that's around. I mean, you look at the geopolitical climate right now.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. I mean, you've got, everything going on in Israel, Palestine. You've got, the whole Ukraine-Russia deal going on. You've got China literally like beating, like thinking about the whole Taiwan situation, right? You've got all of these different things. And then you have the conjugative cycles that are happening. You have all of the different, economic theories that are positioning themselves to sit there and say, hey, this is what's happening. You even have you seen the Messiah 2030 video? Dude, this is bananas. There are 57 prophecies that literally to the date tell us exactly when this is going to happen again.
What?
Yeah, it literally like 2030, they say that the whole thing's going to blow up or we're going to heal it.
No.
And in 2027, September of 2027 is when like everything escalates, and we have that opportunity between now and then to adjust ourselves to stop the crazy path and get on a happy path.
Wow. So September 27th this year?
Not this year, 2027.
Oh, 2027.
Yeah, we have like 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and even what's more interesting is I was watching a video the other day about what's going on in China and the Taiwan deal, that the only times that they would even be positioned to attack, I think, is April and October, based on the channel that goes in between them and how chaotic it gets from a weather perspective and being able to navigate the ships across that water.
Wow.
Because they couldn't do an air raid.
Right.
Because it wouldn't be functional. We saw what happened in like the whole, Ukraine deal. It wouldn't be functional for them. So they would have to come by boat and attack. Right? So, which is kind of crazy. And the only 2 times would be October and April. So therefore, if September in 2027 was the kickoff point, then what would then happen? October would be the month that would take place. That would stir up things from a geopolitical perspective, and everything would take off.
Damn. So do you think the upcoming election will determine the likelihood of this World War III?
Yeah.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. It's nuts. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And that is even spiritually aligned.
Really?
Yes. When I was, it's funny, I look at numbers, right? You take Biden's name and you take Trump's name, and if you break them down to the digital root, they end up adding back up to the number 6, okay, and to the number 33. So what that means is that they go to them. So the number 33 breaks down to 6. You know the digital root stuff where you break it down, okay. And so they both add up to 33 when you put them together. And what that means is if they both come together as 33, or they're 2 3s that come together, and this is the thing that happens, and that's the number of Christ consciousness. If you pull them apart, you're literally ripping apart the balance of Christ consciousness. The best thing that those 2 could have done if they wanted to go down this path is they like team up and become each other's like president, vice president. That would have healed the world.
Really?
Oddly. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now that's a whole other talk track.
They were both too in their ego to do that.
Yeah, there was a whole thing. And it was a beautiful thing, Joe stepping down in order to make room, because of course he was, he was having a tough time.
He was old, yeah.
He's old, I mean, and I would love my grandfather to be like that, he was just a sweet old man, right?
Yeah.
And so him stepping down, making room for feminine energy to come in is a whole other ballgame. Because we're also in the age of Aquarius. Age of Aquarius is a feminine age. If you notice, like everything out there right now is like, the top movies that have
all
like
of them.
female. Yeah, it's nuts, right?
Yeah.
Not an accident. And so that story that's never been told is the story of the woman. We don't know the story of Mary Magdalene to Jesus Christ, right? We don't know the story of Yadisara to Buddha, like his wife at the time.
Right.
We
Never
don't
heard of
know.
this woman, yeah.
Yeah, Moses' wife. You never heard of her either.
No.
Black woman. Like that was a whole thing.
Wow.
So we never hear of these stories of these women that empower these men to be able to become great integrators. And we're at the time now when it's time for that story to be told. It's time for us to hear the woman be able to become the intuitor that helps heal humanity.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that it's Kamala per se, but she is an avatar of mixed race, all kind of ethnicities that can actually come in and start bringing in a different level of intuition and start helping us. Because what feminine energy does, and this is in the Kabbalah, is have you seen the tree of life, right?
Yeah.
Okay. On the right side, or the masculine side of the tree of life, you break everything down. At the top of it, it's wisdom. Okay. Then it goes to love, and then it goes to, I'm losing it right now, victory. Okay. This is like masculine qualities. Feminine qualities are understanding. Okay. It's strength, and then it's foundation. So what they provide are those things. Now, the understanding is about seeing the future. The wisdom is about integrating the past. So we're here to integrate the past and become wise off of it. They are here to, or feminine energy, it doesn't have to be man or woman, but whatever you hold inside of you. And the goal is to find balance. Feminine energy is to see the future and start to avoid the pitfalls based on what we've learned from the masculine efforting. So if the age of Pisces is what we were just in, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius, what does that mean? We have the wisdom for the last 2,000 years to be able to integrate. Now it's time for us to be in that feminine state and be able to start falling in love with our understanding, and that be the guide that moves us forward.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get some pushback for that because the feminist movement. What was that about? That was crazy.
I know.
I think that was a little too extreme. Do you agree with that?
That was the feminist movement was a cry. It was a masculine efforting cry for the women to feel safe, and they were not being heard. So it was a shout. It was a scream, right? In a time that was hard for them to be able to. The rhythm of that time wasn't accurate. Now, I know he said there is no time, but let's say the frequency of the coordinate of that time was not there to hold that container. So it was like, look, we're going to rise up. We're going to make some noise. We're going to stir up things like we never have before, and that is going to create a catapult and at least a piercing of the veil for this next phase for a more, what I would consider a fully embodied feminine movement to happen that is about compassion, that is about strength, that's about foundation, and about receivership. That's the difference.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just with the Me Too stuff, and it got a little crazy there.
It got a little crazy. And that was a gate. I mean, that was a gate to me. Like everything is like gates, portals of these little coordinates of time.
Yeah. I went to Sedona. They said there was portals there.
Yeah. There's portals everywhere.
You think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what exactly is a portal?
A portal is so take this, there's space and there's time, right? It's a space-time positioning to where our energy, so we're vibration, we go to that other space of vibration, and it allows us to start vibrating at a very specific frequency that was placed here on the earth. Now that happens kind of everywhere because like this is a portal, okay? These hotels are portals. There's different energy around them. You set this container to be a very specific energy and a very specific portal, okay? In Sedona, there are very natural ones that took place in vortexes and things like that happen, right?
Right.
So when you go to those, there's these vortexes that hold this very specific energy. And when you go there, you start to basically become one with it, okay? And I can't necessarily say I know what they all do, right? But I know you feel different.
I felt incredible.
Yeah, you feel totally different.
Crazy.
Right. And what I sense is that, like even in Egypt, you've been to Egypt, the whole
I'm
thing?
going next month with Bailey, actually.
Nice. Amazing.
You been there?
I've been there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I wasn't really as
spiritual
as I am now. So I went, but you could definitely feel a totally different kind of vibe. Right. And the key of it is anytime you go to one of these places, you have the chakras in your body.
Yeah.
It's about realigning and taking the energy into those different chakras and their healing frequencies. And you kind of like Mateus de Stefano kind of went across the planet and did this thing where he got those keys and started to unlock things within himself and knowledge started to drop in.
Right.
And if you keep yourself open to receive and you're actually present and you're not bringing your trauma into it and bringing your stuff into it, you'll have magical things happen in those portals. Yeah.
Have you gotten a download like that before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
wow.
I've gotten crazy downloads. Like, I mean, and now I used to seek it and chase it. Yeah. Now it just happens everywhere.
Just happens to you.
Yeah, because you are that.
Wow.
Right? You are that, and every person you meet is a miracle. Like, you're a miracle. Okay? Like, me as I am today have the opportunity to look at you in how I am inside of myself. You literally manifest in front of me as you. So you're a miracle, right? Your guy over there is a miracle. Like my son and my wife are miracles sitting in the green room right now.
Yeah.
There's all of these beautiful miracles that just keep showing up in my life. And when I go to a restaurant, every person that I see is a miracle.
Interesting.
And it's about the work that I'm doing even in there to not just be like, oh, I'm going to be so present in my meal that I'm eating, but I'm also going to send energy and love out to everybody that's around me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're just sending them good energy for
all the time.
Like for what reason though?
It's just because I created them and they created me.
Wow.
I created them and they created me. The fact I'm a miracle to them. We're all miracles to each other. We forget this.
Right. We're all connected, right? Yeah. Source of one.
Yeah.
So every living thing is
everything.
Is connected.
Everything.
Crazy.
Everything that has any kind of atomic structure in it is a miracle. This table is a miracle.
So when someone murders someone, they're murdering themselves in a way.
Exactly.
Isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah. Like when you get mad, think about it. You get mad or upset, and the feeling you have inside does not feel good. Right? And you're just hurting yourself.
Right.
We think we're hurting the other person. We're trying to take the trauma inside of us and pass it on to them so that they can carry the same weight as us and then retaliate. So then I can actually run away from the issues that I have that have been carried on either generationally, right? Or past lives wide, whatever it might be. I'm carrying that. It's about me letting it go and being able to stand with them. And whenever they say something to me, per the comments that I got, thank you and I love you. That's it.
Love it.
Thank you for sharing. I love you. I hear your position. This is how I feel about it.
Right.
I want to argue back. I hear you. I love you too. And we just keep rolling. Eventually they're like, hey, this guy, you can't,
No,
can't
that's
get through to
powerful.
this.
That's a healthy way of debating. Because some people
Exactly.
get too angry and then let it out, and it's not constructive.
It's not healthy at all.
Yeah, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So Terrence Howard broke the internet.
He did
about a month ago,
did,
and you've had him on your podcast, right?
I've had him on my podcast.
Was he saying a lot of the same stuff on your show?
Yeah. So Terrence, I love Terrence. Terrence and I met about 2 years ago, somewhere in that window of time, and a good friend of mine introduced us, and he was wearing that shirt, right? Either it was the square root of 2 equals 1 or the 2 times 1 equals. It was one of the two. He has a couple of them, and he explained it to me at first, and I'm like, bro, I don't get this. You know, I was great in math. You know, I don't understand anything you're talking about. And it took him a while for him to break it down. And then I read his book. If you read his book, you go to the end. He actually explains what it means, right? But the beautiful thing of it is that he was able to capture attention of people to get them to think differently. That's kind of the coolest part about him. So we did talk about some of the stuff on there. We talk about, the geometry of a proton, why hydrogen is so important, the creation of the universe. And a lot of what he talks about is a revival of a lot of Walter Russell's work. You know who Walter Russell is?
Heard of him.
Yeah. So it's reviving a lot of his work, which is cool. And he was kind of seen in a similar way. He was an artist that got like hella scientific.
Right.
Even created like, like atoms, like elements that they weren't even thinking of before they were thought of, before they could even scientifically prove them based on his structure. So what he built was something that was very real. But he was an artist. Terrence is an artist. They both have this awakening, and they both go down this path, and a lot of people judge him.
Yeah, they're painting him as like a crazy man.
Yeah, he's not crazy at all. He's actually quite brilliant. And is everything that he thinks of perfect? No, but nobody's is.
Right.
So, the reality of it is if we all decided that was real, it'd be real. Like, that's the kicker. And we as scientists, come in and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to science you out of this, and I'm going to go back to my old issues. And why did science even ever come about? Like, the question is because we weren't able to hold the reality of magic. So we had to create a thing called science.
To counter it.
Right? So if we just understood that magic was a thing, I don't know how they would have scienced Jesus walking on water.
Yeah, explain that through science.
Exactly. Or fish all jumping into a boat or a burning bush or whatever. Right. Science that. And science all of the old folklore and everything that was out there. They can't. So in order to keep us safe, we create a thing called science to build a container for our logical minds to stay on a linear path. Right?
Wow. And they teach that to all the kids.
And then we create and perpetuate that cycle. It's no wonder why we get sick. And we have also convinced ourselves scientifically that we can die at X age.
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. We're magical. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, and even Scientific America has an article where they talk about we can live for thousands of years.
I've had Taoist masters on the show that they claim to have seen people that have lived like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So it could be possible for sure.
It's a reality. It's a reality when we choose for it to be.
Right. Wow, that is nuts. So you're not teaching your kids science, are you?
I'm letting my son figure out life
and
become himself. And conscious parenting is a hell of a thing. Because it's not about putting them on the system of my own traumatic fear. It's about saying, hey, you go figure out life. You go open your own doors. I'm going to guide you. Right? But if you want to go step off and put your foot in some crazy I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to let you figure that out. And he takes those little ventures. He does those little things. And it's about me loving him and guiding him and saying it's okay every time. And he can come back and then learn more. Right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't learn it and I keep telling him what to do, he's never going to figure it out.
Yeah, I like that because some parents are a little too hands-on.
Oh, dude, it's nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts. I used to be that way.
Yeah, and then you probably rebelled, right?
Yeah.
That's what caused rebellion.
Yeah, I was an I was. And, I'm like, oh, you got to do this Sean's way. And then all I'm going to do is create another Sean. Then what's going to happen? He's going to end up just like I did.
Right.
He's going to end up either miserable. He's going to end up trying to take his life. He's going to end up federally incarcerated. He's going to end up running through like many relationships and women and all the other chaos. And not being an embodied person. So I'd rather him figure it out in the love of himself than me try to press it onto him.
Wow. But it's tough, right? Because you want to guide them, I've seen.
You want to. You don't want them to like go off and fly off a cliff.
Yeah.
But my thing is that if I know that I'm observing him from a wholeness of myself, he's always going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talk about the Messiah Code. Did we cover that already?
Well, the Messiah Code, we did not talk about.
Okay, yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah. So we talked about, so there's a show on YouTube called The Messiah 2030. And what it talks about, and what I'm going to tell you, there's two versions of Messiah Code. There's this Messiah 2030 about what's coming, and there's this prophecy of what's about to happen. what I've developed is a thing called the Messiah Code for myself, right? And it breaks down things from a numerology perspective that help you understand why are things the way that they are, and how to keep your life personally and the life outside of you in balance. So what I recognize is inside of that book or inside of that video, it has all these prophecies and all these things. And when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, okay, the Messiah is supposed to be coming back, right, in 2030. That's what they say. And when that happens, if you look at Revelations, there's all this like fire and brimstone and chaos and all the crazy things that go on. There's also a version of it if you go deeper into, Gospel of the Holy 12 and the Apocrypha and the Gnostic Bible and all these other things, where it talks about like how we all collectively come together and we collectively are the Messiah. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that each of us has a responsibility from the fractaling of the one to come back together as the fractals of the one and look back at the one and say, you know what? God, I love you. And I see you, and I'm going to look at you the way that you look at me. Okay? And then when that happens, there's a code that unlocks everything. We pierce the veil, which we call Christ consciousness. And then once we pierce that veil, we start to actually work with God in this, I call it like a diamond kind of container. And then when we're working with God that way, then we start to move in a different frequency. We technologically upgrade. We think telepathically, right? Because the reality of it is that once I let go of the lack of vulnerability in myself, and I start to see you as you, and I can tell you anything about myself. I can come on here and tell you, some crazy the last time I took whatever it might be. And I'm just open, right? And it's not shameful for me to say those things to you.
Right.
Then what happens is all the thoughts that I have become so pure that I don't mind you reading my mind.
Wow.
Right? And then I'm passing that information back and forth. We don't have to talk anymore. And then the thing that we feel like we have to do to like get a rocket ship and fly to Mars isn't a thing. Like, when they talk about aliens just snap in here and this.
Teleport.
That's what we do. We start to move in frequency and the coordinates of space and time that are just coordinates. Like this is like, oh, this happened in 1942 at that spot. I snap into that space and I observe it.
Wow.
And I heal it. So there's a part of me that believes that these aliens that are coming and visiting us are just us. Okay? Who are evolved version of us in frequencies of space and time that are now observing us and not separate from us. And once we recognize that, we become one with them because they're just coming back and observing us from a different frequency.
Wow.
Of this Messiah code, that once we pierce that veil and we start to rise again, we're going to look different, we're going to act different, we're going to think different, and we're just all going to be like this one moving vibration. But we had to be the key to unlock them to be free.
Interesting.
And come and just exist.
That's fascinating. When was the last time the Messiah code happened? Is it every 2,000 years or something?
So I don't think so. The Messiah happened one time. Okay. So the Jesus Christ Messiah, the 0 point in time, right? Because they weren't counting down to 0.
Right.
All of a sudden, an event happened. This person was born, and we had 0, and then we started counting up.
Got it.
Okay. And we started counting up and counting back, and then all of that in itself is this reflection. So you think about quantum physics, there's a thing called supersymmetry, or symmetry, or supersymmetry. And in supersymmetry, everything has a perfection, and it reflects itself back out, and it has to equate itself on both sides. So if that's the case, and it has to equate itself on both sides, that means that, oh, okay, well, if I start at 0 and I go 500 years, what happens? And I go 500 years back, what happens? Well, 500 years before Christ, what happened? Modern Judaism was born. Okay, Buddhism was born. 500 years after, Islam was born. Okay, so you have these things that start to reflect each other. 1900 AD, you have the whole quantum revolution and Tesla and Einstein and all the craziness, the atom bomb and whatnot. 1900 AD or BC is when they say that Abraham had his sons channeled the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, and like all of modern religion was born.
Wow.
Okay, all these things happen very systematically.
Holy crap.
Okay, so that's part of the Messiah code, is being able to see those numbers, see that time, see the supersymmetry, apply the quantum understanding of what we have now back to the whole, and then be able to see all the possibilities in it, and then move across that space and time to tell what's coming before it happens. And then at which point we can throw it on what we call the happy path or the loving path, change the vibration of it, and then we all collectively ascend because we already know what's going to happen because we can tell backward.
Dang.
Yeah. I call it predicting the past to predict the future.
Yeah, I never heard of that theory. That's cool.
Yeah.
I know you don't believe in time, but there's a lot of new, there's a lot of new evidence saying that humans have been around longer than 100%. What they taught us.
Yeah.
Do you believe in that?
Absolutely. I mean, so to equate one thing, time is an illusion, but a necessary coordinate for us to not go crazy here in the linear framework that we're in.
Right.
So I want to throw that out there real quick,
fair.
right? And when you know that what time is, it means that you can fold into it, and it no longer becomes a thing that inhibits you from growth. Okay. Now, the point about the humans living much longer, to me, what I recognize is there were conscious humans and unconscious humans. Okay. The conscious humans started at this age of Adam. Okay, which probably was 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, somewhere in there. There was something before that that wasn't conscious. Okay, and that whatever was before that wasn't fully conscious, they were here, and it was part of the process of awakening. At which point we snapped into this whole like Elohim,
right.
Yahweh, whatever you want to call our understanding of God as it sat back then. And then it's evolved further so that we can find the God within us.
Got it. So there were humans that didn't have like a spirit beforehand?
They had a spirit, they just weren't conscious of their free will choice.
Got it.
Right? So they were living, I would say, in a blissful state, kind of like how animals live.
Yeah.
Right? So you have animals, they don't know. Like they're in their own Eden, right? Everything's beautiful and it just flows and goes. And then it's like, hey, do you want to have a choice to know what it's like to be God? Right? Well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's some next level stuff.
That's so then we eat the tree, we eat the fruit off the tree.
Right.
We now have this download. We have a complete shift in our body. And then at which point, now we have to actually choose to stand in our truth or stand in the lie. We have to choose to stand in love or to stand in everything that's not love. And all of that is where we have kind of lost ourselves for all that period of time. And we're at the point now to where we can collectively shift that to where we now ascend, and that becomes the second coming of the Messiah.
Right. It'd be cool if we could get to where Atlantis was.
Yes.
One day.
Yeah. And do you know why Atlantis was that way?
I don't.
Because they all saw each other that way. So we talked about before, say that you're a superhero. You know that you've got these awesome powers. You know that you can do these things, but you walk out there and everybody's like, no, this guy's nuts.
Right. A lot of haters. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they bring you down. And so therefore you can never be your full self because you're constantly being observed differently. Right. And it requires you to have to die for yourself over and over and over again for you to be the full you.
Wow.
Hence the crucifixion. Right. So when you can do that on an ongoing basis, it allows the world to then see you that way. So at Atlantis, everybody knew they were magical. Everybody. Everybody's like, okay, these people are like magical. Like this is like, we all can do this. And so when I observe you as your magical you observe me as my magical me, and let's say we're the last two people on earth, we'll start doing some crazy shit. Right? That's how that works.
Wow.
Okay. And that's why it's like relationships. We were talking before the show about, monogamy.
Yeah.
Why it's so important. Because when you have that partner in your life, then you guys observe each other in that state, man, and the things that you can do as a couple is bananas.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's the energy combination of how that comes together is important. Then you build a shield and a safeguard for that. And then the target is for you to be able to go out and expand it and expand it and expand it from the truth of yourself.
So how did they originate? Was it a group of people originally that broke off from society and then they all just believed in each other and then kept populating?
I feel like, well, one, I'm not like a great Atlantean historian. I just understand the energy of why Atlantis was the way that it is. So I'm not going to go into like how they got there and what they did. My notion, okay, just from like what I'm receiving as we sit here right now, is that there were embedded beings that you could call like the Nephilim or any of this, like whatever that old ancient energy was that came down from heaven in order to say, okay, we can be these free will choice beings and we can be this like expanded version of self, and we're going to set the seed for that conscious human to come. They were a little bit different than what we are, right? But they were the guidebook for how we can be.
Right. Are those the Anunnaki?
The Anunnaki, Nephilim, something along those lines. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Do you believe in generational curses?
I believe, yes, I believe in generational curses only because we choose to receive the curse. Okay. It's not something that is forcibly passed down. It's something that we have to wake up not to receive. Right. So my thing is that I can take anything from my mother or my father. Like I'll take being a black man, for instance.
Yeah.
Okay. As a black man, I have, slavery in my family.
Right.
I can take that and be like, oh, woe is me. Where are my reparations? I'm never going to be good enough. I'm always going to look at the white person outside of me as the master. I'm going to do those things, right? And if I choose that and I choose to say, okay, that's better than me, then I'm going to set myself in a curse because I'm choosing to receive that energetically, right? Or I can say, you know what, let me shift that. So what I started to do is I said, well, why was slavery a gift? And I know there's going to be people that are going to go nuts over this, but but why was slavery a gift? Well, you know what? It genetically shifted, okay, the energy of a black man to be like a freaking super athlete. Okay, imagine you're working and doing all these things for all those years. You're passing down an entire like genetic sequence that allows you to be a different kind of athlete. Your culture you have to build. You build culture of music. You entertain yourself a different way. All of a sudden, you got hip hop, blues, all this awesome music that comes out of it. So the amount of like rhythm and the dance and things that are there because it was that what we had to build for ourselves came out of that.
Wow.
Right. So you see all of these blessings. I mean, that's 2 examples. There's more. Right. And there's an aspect of resilience that we're able to have once we tap into it. Where all of a sudden, like, you know, I get why people would oppress because there's all this momentum and all this strength and all this rhythm and all this love and all this music that came out of something that was looking to just destroy people and make them property. You know, so you can't keep love down. And that was the beautiful thing that I ended up recognizing about when I let that trauma of slavery go within myself and say, you know what, I don't have to carry that anymore. I can see it as a gift.
Wow. So you felt that though?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So a lot of guys are feeling that then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all kind of carry it. It's all a chip on our shoulder at some point. You know, and we create a different bravado, a different look, a different this intimidation, this thing, you know, and it's not necessary anymore. Once we see that was a gift for ourselves.
It's interesting because I've looked into slavery and apparently all races have been slaves at one point, right? But blacks are just the most recent.
It's the most recent, and all of us carry that trauma in some capacity, right? All of us carry it. We carry it because we're in a coordinate of space-time in the United States that continues to somewhat persist this whole concept. Right. And that concept is like, oh, well, you know, I'm better than you, or you get a little bit of like racism inside of election. You got Trump calling Kamala not black. And it's like, you know, you've got these little like pockets of weird things that happen that are just pushing on these different racist elements. And it's just a reminder of like, hey, let me put you down. And let me put you down because I made you property at one point. Right. That type of thing. Yeah. You know, and so when we all see the gift that we got out of it, the oppression, you know, because all the trauma is just an opportunity to have a superpower. And once you can see that, all of a sudden you get this big shift, this upgrade, and it no longer haunts you.
That's massive. Yeah. So you don't even see race at this point.
I mean, I see the fact there's different colors of people, but I also honor it because that was part of what I saw in myself to create the beautiful you, and vice versa, right? And there's a reason that you exist in the pigmentation that you do in my life, and I'm going to honor that, right? And so I'm not going to see it as nothing. I'm going to see it as your gift. I'm going to see it as like your why. And there's something that your parents put in you, okay, genetically that made you you. And so all of that in itself allows me to then say, okay, I can see Sean Kelly as this awesome, magnificent person that is unique. And you know what? Also, I can see him as a reproduction of myself. And so what happens is our frequencies start to align. And whether we intentionally create something magical in the world, just by having this conversation, something beautiful will come out of it. There will be some listener that will wake up to themselves and change everything in their life.
Wow. Powerful, right?
Yeah.
Butterfly effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you believe your soul chooses your parents and your siblings and all that?
1000%.
You think so?
1000%.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, 1000%. I have an exercise that I take people through where, how do you see life as God? How do you see the life that you're in as God? Well, one, you have to die to live, okay? So you die to live, and in order to die to live, you have to go, what I say, you go to being the last person on earth. You do a visualization. You see yourself as the last person on earth. And if you're the last person on earth, then what did you create? Okay, so you're not saying, well, my parents created me. You're like, oh, I created my parents. I created my cousins. I created my friends. I created my life. I created all this chaos. I created all of time. I created the whole thing. I'm the last person on earth. I can see everything. And I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful. And if my responsibility was to bring all of that back to God, and say like, God, hey, if I figure this out and I can see the whole thing that I created from the perspective of myself, of all the past generations and everything, I'm going to put a bunch of love and frequency on it. And when it's time for me to go, I'm going to bring it back to you.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah.
So you believe everyone you meet, like that's for a reason?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of how I think now when I meet people.
Yeah.
I'm like, what lesson, what's trying to happen here? You know?
Zero accidents in life. Zero.
No coincidence.
There's no like, oh, this just happened. No, there's no just happened to be anything.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's like I ran into someone in a random town the other day. I'm like, what the hell?
Why are you here?
Yeah, why are you here?
Yeah.
Some random airport.
100%. Have you ever seen it where you go to the gym or you go to a place and you can go at any time and the same people are always there?
Yeah, the same.
Isn't that nuts?
In the sauna, yeah.
Yeah. You're like, wait, I go to the gym at 5 in the morning, I'll go at 10 in the afternoon, and I'll go at like 10 at night.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same people there every single time.
Absolutely.
That's not an accident.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, no, for real. Sean, this has been real fun, man. What are you working on next? Where can people find you?
So what I'm working on right now is I'm dropping a course. I actually have a free class right now that's on. I'm launching at 8/18. Okay, so you can sign up now. That's going to lead into what I call the deeper aspect of the Code of the Messiah, which is like there's 64 keys, and it's different than the gene keys and different than these other things that help us unlock a very specific way to walk through life. You know, where you don't have to go into meditation. You don't have to do all of like all the stuff that we feel like we have to do in order to escape. You can do that, okay? But it's just a different process, a different way of walking. So working on that. Super excited for people to sign up for it. I think our first day we had like 1,000 people sign up, which is nuts. So, so there's that. And so you can sign up, links in my bio if you hit me on Abundance 10,000 on Instagram. Kicking off YouTube eventually soon. And just here to do the work, man.
Let's do it, man. Yeah. We'll link it all below. Thanks for coming on, Sean.
Absolutely, bro. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, guys. As always, see you next time.